Hey, what's up everybody? 8-Bit Flashback here. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Powkiddy RGB20. So this little handheld is capable of playing a ton of retro games and comes preloaded with over 9,000 games on a 64GB micro SD card. Here are some of the specs for the RGB20. For the operating system, it uses open source Linux with the MU3193689 software. The screen is an IPS LCD that measures at 3.5 inches with 480 by 320 resolution. For the CPU, it uses the RK3326 quad-core, which can reach speeds up to 1.5 GHz. For memory, it uses an external micro SD card, which can be expanded up to 128 GB. For the RAM memory, it uses type DDR3 with 1 GB of memory, and this also features Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capabilities, and a rechargeable battery with around 6 hours of playtime. So I think this little handheld looks really cool, with a color scheme and design that definitely seems to be inspired from the original Nintendo Famicom. Even though this handheld is fairly small and compact, it has a ton of features and buttons, with a D-pad, 4 action buttons, start and select, plus an analog thumbstick and 4 extra buttons at the bottom. Then located on the back is 4 shoulder buttons. And pretty much all the controls and buttons seem to work really well. The only control that feels a little bit weird is the analog thumbstick, and that's because of the location. It feels a little bit cramped when using. Located on the top of the handheld is a headphone jack, a micro SD card slot, a USB-C charging port, a Wi-Fi on-off switch, and a USB-C communication port. And here's a look at the 64GB micro SD card that did come included with this handheld. Then located on the left side of the handheld is a reset switch and power button. So this comes with MU3193689 software preloaded, along with a bunch of emulators for various systems, such as Arcade, NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, Sega Dreamcast, PC Engine, PlayStation, and more. There is also a ton of games included as well. I think the total amount of games is around 9,300 or so, with close to full ROM sets for NES, Game Boy, Sega Genesis, and Super Nintendo, and partial ROM sets for many other systems. But something I would like to mention about the games that are included is a lot of the games are from different regions, so the gameplay might vary, and some of the text might be unreadable. Now let's try out a Sega Genesis game. And one thing that's cool is when you go to load a game from an emulator, a lot of times there'll be an intro sound such as this. So this handheld is capable of emulating most of the 8-bit and 16-bit systems with pretty good results, but it can also emulate various other systems ranging all the way up to 128-bit, but the results will vary for these systems. And as you can see here, Vector Man for Sega Genesis is playing great. Now let's try out some Super Street Fighter 2 for Super Nintendo. And this game seems to be playing okay, but maybe a little bit sluggish. I might have to go back and play this on the original system just to see how it originally played. And there may also be a region issue with this game, which could cause some issues with gameplay speed. So for most of the emulators on this handheld, there is hotkeys or shortcuts that can be used to access certain features. If you push the select button and the X button, that'll take you to the Retroarch menu for the emulators that support this. From here, you can save the game, exit the game, and various other features. You can also hold the select button plus R1 to save a game, or L1 to load a game, or D-pad up for volume up, or D-pad down for volume down. Now let's try some Sega Dreamcast playing Sonic Adventure 2 using the FlyCast emulator. So just the fact this little handheld can play Dreamcast is super cool, but the emulation is not so great. But there might still be a few Dreamcast games you may enjoy playing on this handheld. Now let's try out some NES or Famicom and play some Ducktales. So this is using the Nestopia Emulator, and it seems to be playing well. Now let's play some Sonic Advance for Game Boy Advance using the MGBA emulator. And it looks like the Game Boy Advance emulation on this handheld is doing pretty well. Now let's try out a couple PlayStation games using the PCSX Rearmed emulator, and we'll start off with Crash Bandicoot. And the emulation for this game seems to be going well. Now let's try out some Tekken 3, and this is also playing great. Now let's try out a few arcade games. So there is artwork and game previews included with some of the arcade ROMs on this device. And as far as the emulation goes for arcade games, it will really vary. But most of the arcade games up to the mid-90s should play well on this handheld. And as you can see here, Pac-Mania is playing with no issues. Now let's try out another arcade game. This is Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. And it seems to be playing really well, playing it very close to full speed. Now let's try out some PC Engine or TurboGrafx-16, and I'm going to play some Bonk. And it looks like the emulation is playing nice and smooth. I don't see any issues happening while playing this game. Here's my overall thoughts with this handheld. I really like the fact that it's set up and ready to go with a ton of games. And it's surprisingly comfortable to play considering the size of it. And I really like the Famicom-inspired look of this handheld. The 8-bit through 16-bit emulation is really good on this device, and there's a few systems from the 32-bit era with pretty impressive emulation as well. And for anyone out there that's interested in purchasing the RGB20, there'll be a link down below in the description. Okay, it's now time for me to go. If you liked this video, if you could, hit that like button, and please subscribe. And have yourself a great day, and I'll see you next time.